It's the Blue Vote Cafe, a little bit wonkish, a whole lot of fun. I'm David Schellenberg along with Rachel Wickster in Canada's capital of Ottawa, where it's snowing. It's really snowing.
It's snowing. It's magical. It's just drifting down with big Hollywood flakes.
Magical when you're sitting looking out the window at it. Not so magical as I was just out driving around doing a bunch of errands, and it's not magical to drive in.
No, or when you're at the operating end of a snow shovel.
Well, that's what whiskey's for.
Before, during, or after?
Yes, exactly. Well, you know.
I know you.
Who's with us today, Rachel?
Before we do that, David, I was just going to say, this is the first time that we've come back with a reference to a previous episode. I have a follow-up to a question that you asked one of our previous guests. That would be Wayne Liebman, who was visiting us from the Blue Voter Guide a couple of episodes ago.
Right.
You asked him how many different ballots there are in a U.S. election, given that the next neighborhood over might have a different city councilor they're voting for.
Right.
You know, all the different states have their different ballots. As we know, as overseas voters, sometimes you get a shorter ballot when you vote from outside the country. How many different versions of a ballot are there?
Because every single county has got a slightly different ballot, right?
And even smaller units than counties sometimes have different ballots. So I went to my expert who would know if anybody has counted, and he didn't know. And he said he would guess, listen to this, hundreds of thousands, if not a million, different ballots in a U.S. election.
Wow.
How do you like that?
So we still don't know if a million.
We still don't know. We
ballots.
just know. I think the bottom line answer is a lot.
Yeah. Incredible.
And I also wanted to mention for listeners who are new to the pod, and since we're now being heard on the Democrats Abroad YouTube site channel. Hello? Did I disappear?
No. Hello to.
Oh, you're saying hello to them. It's all about me. For anybody who wants to find our full library of episodes, just go to bluevotecafe.com. You'll find all the back episodes, and they're all still good. Our first episode is reliably our most popular. I don't know what that says about our skills now, but
Or our marketing ability.
Exactly. That's it for the public service announcements.
Wonderful. Well, I learned a lot, which is always a nice surprise.
I'm glad. Happy to help.
All right, who's with us today, Rachel?
Today I'm really excited. I'm always excited about our guests, but I'm extra excited today. Today we have Steve Erickson, who is a novelist. He's written 10 novels, 3 books about politics and American culture. He's chair of the creative writing department at the University of California, Riverside. He's won multiple awards and fellowships, and I invited him to join us because of a post he wrote on New Year's Day for the Journal of the Plague Years about 13 New Year's resolutions. We'll get to that in a second, but first, I'd like to welcome him. Steve, welcome to the Blue Vote Cafe.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I can't wait to dig in. Yeah, why don't we first, obviously you're teaching at Riverside, so you must be in California.
Yeah, so what part of the world are you in?
I live on Hollywood Boulevard. I walk out my front door and I'm stepping on one of those stars in the sidewalk. I'm in a building. I'm in a building where on the registry downstairs, which is a holdover from earlier days, Ronald Reagan's name is there. That is, he used to live in the building. Audrey Hepburn's name is there. She used to live in the building. It used to be the headquarters for the Oscars a long time ago when they first started, and when the Oscars were held a block away at the Roosevelt Hotel. So that's where I live.
Wow.
How long have you lived there?
I've lived here 3 years, and before that I was living with my family in Topanga Canyon, which couldn't be more different.
Wow.
And I think that's probably why I chose it. I was ready after 25 years of pastoral beauty and bucolic serenity. I was ready for Hollywood Boulevard.
Wow.
Garbage trucks and sirens.
And that's a benign moment on Hollywood Boulevard. the homeless people screaming at each other at 4 a.m, and the motorcycles roaring up and down. So it's right in the heart of LA.
Gritty urban life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm just stuck on the stars. If you walk out your front door and turn right, whose name do you step on first? Or left?
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry I asked that.
That's such a specific question. I was impressed if you would have known.
The name that is closest to me that I recognize is Anne Savage, and if you're a fan of film noir, you know who Anne Savage is. She was in a noir classic called Detour, and she's the most recognizable name.
Wow. Well, that's a good neighbor to have, I would think.
Maybe if you've seen the movie, maybe not. She is one of the most fatale of femme fatales. So, I am right in the thick of it. So
amazing. Wow. Okay. So,
Yeah. On to the topic at hand. How about politics?
how about exactly?
How about
Glamour to
that politics?
Oh my God, they keep mixing, don't they? Yes. Do you want to tell us what? I mean, it sounds such a silly question. What led you to write your New Year's piece? But maybe you could just tell us a little bit about it for those who haven't read it yet. And I will link to it in the description of the podcast.
Sure. There are in the piece 13 New Year's resolutions. As you said, it ran on New Year's Day. Each one in the form of something that this year, in our effort to save democracy, in a year when I think democracy is more at risk than it's been any time since 1864. There are 13 resolutions concerning the luxuries we don't have. And the first one that occurred to me and that kind of led to writing the piece was we do not have the luxury of our dread, which is to say that I think most of the people I know, and certainly that includes myself, have sort of been dreading this year.
Yeah.
I think we've been dreading this year since last year or the year before last. And the point I was trying to make is we can't go there anymore. We have to shake that off, and we can't afford the inertia and the paralysis that dread creates. And so I was, I was lying in bed one night thinking about that, and then I started to come up with more luxuries we can't afford. We can't afford the luxury of our delusions. We can't afford the luxury of our euphemisms. We can't afford the luxury of old enmities or old civilities. All of these things that, in my mind, if only for me, kind of cohered into a manifesto of action, of a psychic space that we need to find our way to, so that we can do this year what has to be done.
Here.
There's always a dilemma in that humans are never perfect. If that's kind of what you're suggesting, but you do sort of get the feeling that we could be better than who we are.
Well, I think I think that's probably the I think that's probably been the American aspiration since the beginning. When people say this is not, this meaning the state of the country right now, this is not who we are. Unfortunately, right now, this is who we are.
Right.
But this is not who we want to be. I think that's the bigger point. So it's that old thing about creating the more perfect union, understanding that it's never going to be perfect.
Right. There, I think, from a global perspective, we do see American politicians from all the parties will get on a stump somewhere and give a long speech about how the United States is the greatest democracy in the world. Do you think it is?
I think I would rather answer the question this way, if I can. I think that for people around the world, America represents more than any place else possibilities. I think that's why people come here.
Right.
If you break our social structure down into its various components of healthcare and education and environmental control and all of those different factors, it's pretty hard, I think, to make a real argument that this is the best country to be. I would certainly trade the healthcare system we have right now for the one you've got in a heartbeat.
Well, and keeping in mind, like this Democrats Abroad group that you're talking with, these are all people who could be living in the United States but have chosen not to live in the United States. And if it's Canada or Europe or Australia or China, our members are literally in every single country around the world, give or take 2 or 3 probably. But yeah, we've all sort of come to the conclusion that maybe there are better places to be.
Right.
Or at least we've seen things done better in other countries and come to understand that the way the U.S. does it is not the only way to do things.
Right, and I think that I think what part of what is at stake this year is not only whether democracy is going to survive, and I do think that that's at stake with all hyperbole set aside, but whether this is going to continue to be that nation of limitless possibility that, rightly or wrongly, a lot of people around the world see us as. And I think that if democracy goes, that goes too.
Yeah, I think that's right. So another thing that's sort of tangentially related is one of the luxuries you outline that we do not have is that of confusing an imperfect choice for an unclear one.
Yeah, that may be actually except for overcoming our dread. That may be the most crucial of the 13 that I enumerated in the piece, because I mean, there are a lot of people in the country right now on the left, and I generally don't consider myself a person of the left, but there are a lot of people on the left right now who are, for instance, angry with the current administration about Gaza. Or about student loans, or about somehow not getting more accomplished in a Congress that is not conducive to accomplishing anything. And I, to be very blunt, after 2020, in which I was pretty much for Biden from the beginning because I felt like he had the best chance of winning. I kind of wish he was not running this year. I worry that that his age, for instance, more than anything else, is permeating the collective perception of him. But all of that, but be all of that as it may, this is still the choice that we're probably going to wind up with, and we need to accept that, and we need to understand that while it's not the most perfect of choices, and while my 18-year-old daughter complains a lot about about Biden on any number of counts, as imperfect as this choice is, it's a manifestly clear choice.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes.
Manifestly clear choice.
It's still the better choice.
It's easily the better choice.
Yeah.
And, I keep going back in my mind to a dinner that I had a few weeks before the 2016 election with a couple whose politics were to the left of mine, frankly, who were not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. They didn't like her, and they didn't. And three Supreme Court justices later, it's pretty clear that was the wrong choice.
Yep.
Whatever complaints you had with Hillary Clinton, if she had been elected in 2016, it feels pretty certain that women would still have reproductive rights that they don't have now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
That's an excellent point.
And so, again, an imperfect choice that was a very clear one and not at all ambiguous.
Well,
right.
and at this particular moment in time, so January 22nd, we're seeing Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump. And on the Republican side, I find it fascinating. People will find one little thing about Nikki Haley's past that they won't like, so we'll vote for Trump.
Yeah,
and I keep thinking, but there's 8 million things about Donald Trump that he's done weird. So why would you nitpick one or two little things that she's done badly and still vote for this guy?
I think because in the case of Trump, I don't think it is now, and I'm not sure it ever has been about ideology. I think it's about pathology. I think that people are connecting with Trump on some level that is outside a rationality that we can understand, and they are forgiving Trump all those things because there's something about Trump that makes them want to. And they're condemning Nikki Haley for that one little thing because there's something about her that makes them want to do that. And I think that probably more than anything else, what is unsettling about our times is the way that so many people have taken a leave from empirical fact-based reality.
Yes, exactly.
And believing the news, put that word in quotes, that they want to believe, and disbelieving the news that they don't want to believe, to a point where there are just no longer common coordinates that we can potentially meet on, and it's unsettling, and it's depressing, and the benign part of me wants to believe that we can all reason together, but I think we may be past that, and I think I think we're just going to have to win politically.
Right.
I think the other side is just going to have to be beaten politically again and again and again.
Yeah.
This year it feels like the most important election of my lifetime. But you know what? The last election felt like that too.
Yeah.
It sure did. Yeah. And I've been saying that too. We keep saying it's the most important, but I mean, last time it was the most important of our lifetime. And this one is even more so.
Yeah. We keep saying it because it's true. Yeah. Each time we say it. And you know what? It may be true the next time too. We may now be staring down the barrel of a series of crucial lifetime elections.
Yeah, we may be.
Thinking about the perspective of an 18-year-old, who would your daughter, any 18-year-old, who do you think they would like to see as the Democratic presidential candidate?
In 2024, I don't know. That's a good question. I can tell you in 2020, when she was 14, she had on her bedroom door a picture of Bernie Sanders with a sign that said, to enter here, you must feel the burn. Which I wasn't for Bernie Sanders, but I appreciated that at 14 she was engaged.
Yep.
And was paying attention.
Exactly.
I don't know who she would be for in 2024. Maybe I should ask her that the next time.
If you could
find a way to talk about this.
Pick any person who is eligible to be president of the United States, like who.
Any person not necessarily even in the running at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Who would? Because this is the frustration I find when people list some of their concerns about their current candidates, and I will say to them, well, who do you want? And then it seems to be the same thing you just said. There's sort of this gloss that goes over their head, and they seem to have a hard time pulling up an actual name of somebody that they want to be running.
So does anybody come to mind? Do they mention?
No, it's the same as you. It's just sort of it's a weird.
You're talking about. Young people, David, or just anybody you talk to?
I find the majority of people I talk to, which admittedly I'm sitting in Canada, so I'm not talking to Americans, but they sort of look at the United States and where I'm going with this is kind of do we have a lack of heroes, a lack of leaders, a lack of people that we would look up to, and in society at the moment?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I hope not. In my case, because I'm an old guy, my hero worship becomes irrevocably intertwined with my sense of practicality and
eat your broccoli.
Yes, exactly right. And in the last election, I liked Elizabeth Warren a lot, but she was the chocolate sundae and the broccoli of Joe Biden.
It was the only one with the antioxidants.
Yes, exactly.
And pay your taxes.
One with the acne, with the antioxidants that would keep you alive through the life.
Exactly. And actually, coming back to Biden and something you said earlier about age, I was going to ask you this because I wasn't going to ask you about American Stutter yet because we haven't really finished talking about your New Year's resolutions. But you pointed me to your piece. I don't know if you call it a book. It's about 60 pages, I guess, American Stutter, which I just finished reading this afternoon and absolutely gutted me. But I mean, it's an incredible thing. A journal you kept from July of 2019 until January of 2021. Yeah. In there, you have some interesting points to make about ageism. Are we the first generation confounded by getting old? And I was starting to wonder as I was reading those words today, Is that playing into, if that is the case, is that playing into our perception of Joe Biden as too old for the job?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's entirely unfair to worry about Joe Biden's age. I have no doubt that he can do the job now. Mm-hmm. If he's reelected, will he still be able to do it in 3 years? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah. On the other hand, if you've been watching Donald Trump lately, he's on the campaign trails saying things that don't make any sense at all. I mean, even sense in a Trumpian context. He's got an Obama fixation that seems to sabotage every point he makes. He thinks Obama is still in the White House. He thinks he beat Obama the last time. He gets his world wars mixed up.
He got Nikki Haley confused with Nancy Pelosi.
Nikki Haley confused with Nancy Pelosi. He seems mentally unraveling in a way that is not true of Joe Biden. I mean, Biden, is looking older. He's moving older. His
voice is older. He's speaking softly. Yeah.
Speaking voice is certainly older, but he's all there. Mm-hmm. And
and Biden has a stutter. He's always had a stutter,
right?
And I think some people can confuse a stutter with a lot of other things, but a stutter is just a stutter.
Right. And
Steve can talk about that. Steve writes about it eloquently.
Yes, it was a setup. I know. Yeah.
As a stutterer myself, I know the tricks of stuttering. I know the ways you learn to get around it, and I know how it can be perceived. I think actually Biden handles his quite admirably, but yes, I think you're right. I think that reinforces that sense of or that wonderment people have as to whether he's still up to the task of governing.
Yep.
But we are looking at someone who was unfit for the job 4 years ago, and someone who's eminently fit for the job now and for the foreseeable future. Maybe that'll be a short future, but it's still a stark choice.
It's still a stark choice. And I was just, I was watching something before I jumped on here with you guys where they were saying that the age issue is, as it pertains to Biden, is going to be, it's going to be less effective if the Republicans nominate Trump, because Trump has never been fit for the job in any number of ways, but there are ways, and I don't say this, I'm not trying to slander anybody. There are ways in which he is showing, he's displaying signs of a mental unraveling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw somebody in, how would you advise Biden, something in the paper today, and the first thing he said was challenge Trump to 3 debates.
Yeah, right, exactly.
He said all Biden needs to do is keep his temper and keep his train of thought, and he wins. Yep.
Well, and Trump, I heard today talking about his cognitive abilities versus Nikki Haley's cognitive abilities. And it's like, all right, and you're going to go challenge Nikki Haley for a cognitive abilities test is what Trump said. And I thought, yes, do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trump, another one. Now we're spending too much time on Trump, but yeah, he was comparing him being 77 versus Biden being 80, and Trump saying how much more sharp a 77-year-old is than an 80-year-old. And all I could think is, but if you're president, you'll be president while you're 80. So your logic doesn't make any sense.
Well, I was going to say there's no logic governing there.
There isn't.
interesting. Just to, David, pick up on something you kind of said in passing there. We're spending a lot of time on Trump. I think it's important to understand that Trumpism created Trump, not the other way around. And if Trump goes away, I think we're still dealing with the things that created him.
Yes.
And there is still, I think, out there some section of the electorate that seems to have grown weary with democracy.
Yes. There's a distrust for authority.
And science and truth, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
None of that is new, though. I think we've always seen a certain frustration between the classes. The interesting thing here now is when you talk about the working class, Trump seems to have connected with the working class in a way that traditionally the Democrats would have, but the Democrats seem to have lost touch with a lot of what would have been considered their base several decades ago.
Right. No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, we're all familiar with the James Carville axiom, is the economy stupid? I no longer think that's true. I think now the axiom is it's the culture stupid. And in some way, shape, and form, Trump has come to embody what the working class identifies with culturally. And you compound that with people who are in genuine economic stress because globalism has passed them by.
Yeah.
People who are on the wrong side of an economic paradigm where, the very wealthy get wealthier and everybody else is struggling to keep up. And, there's no way to put too fine a point on it. The fact that sometime in the next quarter century, we're going to become a country of minorities.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's not going to be a majority anything. And for all of us who see that as the fulfillment of America's pluralistic promise, there's a bunch of folks out there, probably tens of millions, virtually all white, who are freaked out by, what is, to paraphrase an old Public Enemy album, fear of a non-white nation.
We haven't had Public Enemy quoted on the podcast before, so
no, that is a first.
Achievement unlocked. Nicely
I've been
done.
I've been the one to do it. How it is that it took an old white guy to do it or anybody else, I don't know.
Oh, you know your music. You clearly do. Both of your pieces that I've read now end with a playlist. Very as eloquent as your writing, I would say.
Well, the playlist I can't take credit for. That was compiled by somebody else. In any case, I never thought it was an accident that the guy whose entree into national politics was his baseless and racist contention that the first African American president wasn't a real American and wasn't a real president.
Right.
Wound up, being embraced by the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has come up in the past as well, where the Republican Party themselves, we all know Republicans that we like, but there's something really weird in that party at the moment where they just can't seem to figure it out.
No, they can't. As I mentioned in Well, I think I mentioned it in the New Year's resolution piece, and I mentioned it in American Stutter. I was raised a Republican. So, basic Republican values of lower spending, lower taxes, and things like that I don't necessarily agree with, I can still,
You can understand
respect
them. Yeah.
and understand. That is not what we're talking about anymore.
No.
I mean, this Republican Party is no longer that. This is a Republican Party that wants to pretend 150 years after the fact that the Civil War was not about slavery.
Right.
Yes, that is odd.
A Republican Party that was founded as an anti-slavery party. So it's no longer a traditional right versus left paradigm. It's now an up versus down paradigm, with the crux being the survival of democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, the stakes are high.
Yeah.
So, as I finished American Stutter this afternoon, because you are a novelist, the question occurred to me: if you were living in a parallel universe where Hillary was elected, and you had drafted American Stutter as a novel, what would that mean? What would you think? Would you chuck it, or would you go, wow, this is a really good book? And there's so much packed into that time period. It's crazy.
I actually wrote that book.
That's my ignorance then, is not having.
All right, we've got a reading assignment. Yeah.
I do.
I wrote that book. I finished a draft of it, my first draft of it, the month that Trump declared his candidacy in 2015.
Oh my God.
It was published in February of 2017, the first month of Trump's presidency.
Wow.
And a lot of reviewers said, "Oh, this is the first novel of the Trump era."
Oh my God.
It's called Shadowban, as in Autobahn.
Autobahn, yeah, cool.
So I kind of went there already, and I've struggled, frankly, to write fiction sense, because I find history has been outracing my imagination. And so that's how American Stutter came to be.
Came about, right. Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to ask you what, if you were writing the novel of the next 4 years, what you would predict.
Yeah, I'm not ready to answer that.
No,
yet.
that's fair. I don't want to hear it.
I mean, just to kind of wrap things up on a positive note, I'm not generally an optimistic person. I kind of have this gut feeling it's going to be okay. But the only way it's going to be okay is if we all mobilize.
Yep.
And we all, I think if everybody turns out to vote, and if everybody understands, as you just said, Rachel, that a lot is at stake, I think it'll be okay. But I don't think we can fall asleep at the switch. And I know a lot of people who are just sort of waking up now, because they're normal people who don't follow politics 24/7.
Agreed, yes.
Are just sort of waking up now to the possibility of Trump becoming president again.
Apparently, Biden had a huge surge in fundraising the day after the Iowa caucuses.
Is that right?
Yeah, so that's evidence of exactly what you were saying. Let's see more of that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be a fundraising thing, though. This is going to be a complete
Not about money.
Ballot, well, best ballot turnout thing. This is going to be a get out the vote. And I don't honestly think any of the messaging that any of these two presidential candidates says is going to make a difference, because nobody's going to change their minds.
I think you're right.
I think I agree with that as well. But there is that sliver that for some reason hasn't made up its mind yet. And it may be 5%, but I think you're correct that they aren't going to be swayed by fundraising. They're going to be moved by nuts and bolts in the street organizing.
Yeah. Yes. Something that shows momentum. What terrifies me about our candidate is his imperfections will cause people to just stay at home and not bother to vote, because they can't bring themselves to vote for an imperfect candidate, and so a corrupt candidate will win. And somehow they're motivating people to actually go out and vote, even with imperfections, I think is going to be a struggle.
I think that's right, and I think that is the way, and maybe the only way, that Trump really wins.
Yeah.
And that is making people understand what Rachel said, and that is how much is at stake. Because it's difficult for me to imagine that Trump lost the popular vote the first time. He lost the popular vote the second time. It's difficult for me to imagine who did not vote for him those two times, who's going to vote for him this time. Therefore, I think it's a matter of, just as you say, David, it's a matter of making sure everybody else votes. And that they don't check out out of some disenchantment.
Yep. I'll add another little note of optimism, which is that, I think we deserve it, and and maybe it will help to motivate people to get out there. Last time the campaign was conducted during the pandemic, the Democrats largely did not go door to door. We know the most effective way to get people to vote is a person-to-person contact. This time around, we can go door to door. I'm hoping that'll give us a little bump that we didn't have last time.
Yeah. And I would also point out, speaking of the Iowa caucus, that the turnout was 14% of registered Republicans, not 14% of all voters, 14% of registered Republicans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Half of whom did not vote for Trump.
Yeah, you're right.
So Trump is going to be nominated, and I think he is going to be the nominee. Trump is going to be nominated largely on the basis of 7% of the Iowa vote, and whatever happens in
New Hampshire. Yep. I saw, I don't remember who it was, but another commentator saying last time around, I guess it was the polls in Iowa had Trump at 95%, and this time they had him at 50% or 52 or whatever. And why isn't that the story?
Right. Yes. No. I agree. It was the worst blizzard in 200 years or something, and half the people who turned out voted against him.
Well, who knew we would work ourselves into a hopeful, optimistic place?
I know, right?
It's not over yet.
No, it's not over yet.
But I think, getting back to where we started, this is part of what I meant when I wrote that we don't have the luxury of our dread. We can't afford to be overwhelmed by that dread. We have to be energized, and it's some mix of anxiety and hope, I think, that will do that.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Held in equal measure, maybe.
Yes. And like a good author, there's a happy ending.
Oh, wait. Wait. Are you saying only people who write happy endings are good authors? Okay,
That'll be the topic for another. Yeah. Well,
Steve, is there anything you haven't said that you would like to say, or is there a little piece of something you'd like to read us? Or
I'll do whatever you want to hear, Rachel. Do you want me to read from this this piece that we started off talking about, or do?
Sure.
And if so, for how long?
As long as pleases you. I mean, something as long as makes sense.
Okay, so let me go down my New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
And maybe just add a line or two about each.
Okay, love it.
Does that sound okay?
yeah.
Sounds fabulous.
Yeah. We do hear sirens going past your place every now and then too.
That's great.
Hollywood Boulevard.
It's
Boulevard.
Yes, they're not sound effects. It's actual sirens.
Oh, no, they aren't. They're real. Okay. So as I said, the first thing that occurred to me as I was sort of drifting off into a dreadful sleep is we do not have the luxury of our dread. Or put more precisely, we don't have the luxury of the paralysis engendered by dread. We do not have the luxury of our exhaustion, or put more precisely, we do not have the luxury of the inertia engendered by exhaustion. We do not have the luxury of our delusions. When and if Trump vanishes, the conditions that created this distinctly American fascism, a word I don't use lightly, continue to roil the country.
Yeah.
We do not have the luxury of our euphemisms. Trump and his most devout followers in Congress and the country aren't extreme conservatives. They're not autocrats. They're not right-wing. They're fascists. I note this as someone coming not from a radical left-wing background, but rather raised a Republican. Trumpism checks off every fascist box: a cult of personality, a rootedness in white male Christian supremacy, an exaltation of power and strength, not just over all other values, but in lieu of them, a calculated victimization of the powerless, a sense of self-martyrdom, impulses of violence that are stoked rather than suppressed, and more than anything else, a contempt for and hostility to the notion of an empirical, fact-based truth that's valuable by virtue of being true.
Mm-hmm.
We do not have the luxury of overthinking. We do not have the luxury of choosing one conflicting truth over another. We do not have the luxury of bad faith. We do not have the luxury of outdated enmities or the luxury of outdated civilities. We do not have the luxury of moral vanity. That means that if you're voting for Cornel West or Robert Kennedy Jr., you're making a meaningless choice in the most meaningful election in modern American history just to indulge your sense of self-righteousness. We do not have the luxury of confusing an imperfect choice for an unclear one. We do not have the luxury of deus ex machina. And a good one, I think, probably to end this on, we do not have the luxury of being too cool for patriotism. We should be wrapping ourselves in the flag every chance we get. We should be making it clear in our own minds and in the public mind that we are the true Americans in this Civil War. We are the Americans of the Bill of Rights and Constitutional Preamble. We are the Americans of Gettysburg and Normandy, of happiness's eternal pursuit and memory's mystic chord and our nature's better angels.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real privilege and a real treat to talk to you today.
Thank you for inviting me, you guys.
Yeah, learned a lot, and
So much.
yes, now we're all going to be sleepless tonight.
No,
But we planted little seeds of optimism. Don't forget
That's right.
that.
That's true.
And maybe we'll come back to you in a few months and see how things have changed at that
See
point.
how our seeds are growing.
Yes.
See how the garden is flourishing. Yeah.
That's right. How many of us are watering it and
Yeah.
pulling up the weeds?
Pulling up the weeds.
So I'm just going to do a quick little PSA because it is 2024. If you have not registered and requested your ballot at votefromabroad.org, do it. You register through a federal form with your voting state, but with better protections than you get if you register directly with your state elections office. So go to votefromabroad.org to register and request your ballot, and do it now. And you can also watch your email for information about voting in the Democrats Abroad global presidential primary. And that's it.
Yes.
I'm Rachel Oikster with David Schellenberg in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for listening to Democrats Abroad, the Blue Vote Cafe.